auspicious occasion of inauguration of Ohio chapter of World Vegan Vision. Veganism, vegetarianism is not a new concept. It is the need of the hour. And today we are starting a movement. This is the first step that we are taking towards the movement. And for any movement to succeed, we cannot start without pleasing our Lord Ganesha. So first we will seek the blessings of our Lord Ganesha. We have a very cute little girl. Her name is Lavina Sahu. And she is a student of Shami Srivastava. She is a student of Ratanpur Tarana. That is a school for the classical music. And she is going to start an opening dance, Pushpanjali, a fusion of Guru Vandana, Ganesh Stuti and Durga Shlok in Bharatnatyam classical dance style. So I would request Miss Lavina Sahu to come on stage.
Vakratunda Mahakala Suryakoti Samprabha Nirvignam Kurumede Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Om Ganganapataye Namo Namaha Shri Siddhi Vinayaka Namo Namaha Ashtavinayaka Namo Namaha Ganapati Bappa Moria Om Ganapataye Namo Namaha Shri Siddhi Vinayaka Namo Namaha Ashtavinayaka Namo Namaha Ganapati Bappa Moria
Om Ganapataye Namo Namaha Shri Siddhi Vinayaka Namo Namaha Ashtavinayaka Namo Namaha Ganapati Bappa Moria.
I'd like to invite Mr. Kamal Panchal, the President of Ohio chapter. As you all know, Mr. Kamal Panchal is a vegetarian restaurateur and passionate for this cause. Mr. Kamal Panchal.
Everyone, I thank you very much for coming today for this auspicious occasion. And first, I would like to thank Mr. H.K. Shah and Mrs. Malti Shah for thinking about this good cause and request for vegetarianism. And it was done by them 25 years before. They created a platform of this non-profit organization, Vegetarian Vision, which is today as World Vegan Vision. I thank Mr. H.K. Shah, Mr. Vinod Shah, Mr. Nitin Vyas, and Mrs. Chandra Mehta, along with their entire committee, members of the World Vegan Vision, for giving us an opportunity to start Ohio chapter. I also thank Mr. Vinod Patel, Mrs. Tejal Dhruv and Mr. Ajay Pandya for joining Ohio chapter team. Only because of them I am confident to move forward for this good cause. I request them to come on the stage for a brief introduction, please. Mr. Vinod Patel, Tejal Dhruv and Mr. Ajay Pandya. So they are going to help me to move forward with our vision and spreading veganism in Ohio. Thank you very much to all of you. We have plans to provide access to healthy vegan food with convenience and affordability, to provide information on preparing vegan food as well as making it available in school system. This is just the beginning and we have a long list of ideas. We will come up with our plans in due course and will include you in all the missions. We thank you everyone who has helped us in planning and execution this event. Now we would like to greet our honorable guest with flowers. I would like to request Ms. Ami Panchal to to welcome Mrs. Chandra Mehta with flowers. Chandra Mehta, please. Chandra Mehta is Vice President of Wellbeing and Vision, and she has been also the mentor for this good cause. Thank you very much for coming here today. I will request Tejal Root to welcome Mr. Vinod Shah. Mr. Vinod Shah is a lifelong volunteer for this cause and is Director of Development for the World Vegan Mission. Mr. Vinod Shah, please. I thank you, Mr. Vinod. I'm only here because of Mr. Vinod Shah. He brought me to this good cause and for this mission for veganism. Thank you very much, Mr. Vinod Bhai. I would like to request Mrs. Tejal Patel to welcome Mr. Nitin Vyas. Mr. Nitin Vyas has been serving this cause for over 15 years and is Director of Public Relations of the World Vegan Vision. Mr. Nitin Vyas, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nitin Bhai.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And finally, I would like to request Aditi Dhruv to greet Dr. Esselstyn with flowers. Dr. Cardlwell Esselstyn is Chief Cardiologist at Cleveland Clinic and our renowned keynote speaker. Dr. Cardwell, please. Now I request Mr. Vinod Shah to come on stage and share a few words, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kamal Bhai. I want to thank each and everyone sitting here in this audience. We are very pleased and proud to see you all because it seems like you believe in the cause of being either vegetarian or a vegan, and also to save the animals and to save and protect the planet Earth. There are too many things, too many people, too many things to think about, but we all can contribute one thing on our side. It's like conserving anything that you save, it will be good for the future generation. What we are doing today, your children, your grandchildren, everybody will reap the benefits or face the consequences. So therefore, we are having this movement of making people vegan. There is a marginal difference between vegan and vegetarianism. More details will explain by various media and means and speakers. But the amount of water consumed to raise farm animals, cattle, pigs, cows, which are used for meat-eating consumption, is at least 500 times more than the human being or more. I don't want to go into logistics, but one thing that any water saved will be the best one for the future generation and for the health of the people. I just want to conclude by saying that our founders, Mr. H.K. Shah and his wife Malti Shah, they had thought of it many years ago to become vegetarian. The world is changing. The world is changing from vegetarianism to veganism. Therefore, after 25 years of service, volunteering service, we have chosen to change our name to World Vegan Vision in order to make a bigger platform of communication and also to create awareness to the people Of course, charity begins at home. We started with New Jersey, then we expanded to New York chapter, and with the help of Kamal Panchal and his team, we agreed, we decided, and we chose to pick up Columbus, Ohio as the new center for our chapter. So I welcome all the new members who are office bearers to be. At the same time, all of you who are sitting here, I'm going to request only one thing you can do. Please tell your friends, everyone you know, from your colleagues to the superiors to the employees to anyone, that at least become vegetarian for 2 days, at least become vegan for 3 days, or at least 1 day a week, and they will change the world. Slowly, I mean, it's just like in any medicine, people get used to different things, and when they see the difference, they will really appreciate that you did something good for the society. There are a lot of logistics and information that can be coming, but I think we have expert Dr. Cardlwell Esselstyn. I would not give his introduction because Tejal is having a full details about. He is the most prominent person in the world. He is a doctor, physician, vegan, and vegan promoter. Will give you a lot more details. Thank you very much. Wish you all good luck. But please follow my suggestion. Tell 5 people that become a vegetarian or vegan, at least for a week. Thank you.
I would like to request Mrs. Chandra Mehta. She is the Vice Chairwoman of Ohio World Vegan Vision. Please come here and share your wisdom with us.
Welcome to World Vegan Vision. Our task must be to free ourselves by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty, by Albert Einstein. World Vegan Vision before was known as Vegetarian Vision, founded by Sri H.K. Shahji and Malti Ben about 26 years ago. We are here to celebrate vegetarianism and vegan food and the positive global, environmental and health benefits of a plant-based diet. The future of meat is vegan, by Bill Gates. It is with great pride that World Vegan Vision is opening the Ohio chapter in Columbus, Ohio today, December 9, 2018. Thanks to President Kamal Panchalji and the executive members for working hard to make this incredible event successful. Special thanks to our directors Vinod Bhai and Nitin Vyasji. We will be hearing from our chief guest, keynote speaker, Chief of Cardiology, Cleveland Clinic, Ohio, former Olympic rowing champion and author of the award-winning Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. He has with the organization long time. He has spoken 3 times, including the international convention held last year in 2017 at Penn Pavilion Plaza near Madison Square Garden in New York City. I just want to say that, the change needs some time. Vegan हो चाहे vegetarian हो, कुछ भी एक दिन के लिए बन सकते हैं, वीक में 1 बार बने, 2 बार बने, पर try कर सकते हैं, and really there are health benefits. Thank you.
And then the rest of the steps will follow. Now I will ask Mr. Nitin Vyas to come on stage and share 2 words with us.
Hello, how are you today? Are you ready for the opening? All right, good, thank you. गुरु को गुलशन मुबारक, चांद को चांदनी मुबारक. गुरु को गुलशन मुबारक, चांद को चांदनी मुबारक, शायर को शायरी और आप सभी लोगों को नितिन व्यास का प्यार भरा नमस्कार मुबारक. Honorable guest, Dr. Cardlwell Vice Chairwoman Chandraji, our Director, Mr. Vinod Shah, the President of OIR Chapter, Cardlwell Esselstyn, Binal Ben, Binal Bhai, Tejal Ben, and Ajay Bhai. Friends, family members, and the guests, it is indeed a great pleasure, privilege, and the honor to be a part of this wonderful, wonderful gathering. Today is a very special day. Special for me, for our chairman, Mr. H.K. Shah, Manti Shah, our vice chairwoman, Chandraji, our trustee, K.K. Mehta, Vinod Shah, that under the leadership of Kamal Mehta, Kamal Panchal, and their wonderful team, and with your support, we are opening the new chapter in Ohio. So, ladies and gentlemen, push your hand together for supporting this wonderful, wonderful organization and taking your time to come over here. Thank you, thank you. So I won't take your much time. I just wanted to, I'm a vegan, by the way. I'm vegan not because of the health, because I love my grandkids. And of course, I want to create the safe planet for them. So I take this opportunity to congratulate Kamal Bhai and their entire team. Congratulations. And I'm a part of any time, if you need any help, I'm always there. And I'm sure that you will be doing, much better than other two chapters. Good luck. Thank you.
Now, because he said this shairi, even if this was not a part of my speech, I just came up with one line. The line is in Gujarati. It says, "Hu uthyo ne mari hasti bulai gai, angni pani mathi nikli ne jagya purai gai." We have very limited time on the planet. As my Sadhguru says, all you have to do on this planet is live fully. So when we are here, we have to make our life meaningful. I'm going to hand over the stage to our keynote speaker who has made his life meaningful, Dr. Cardlwell Esselstyn. It is not possible to include all his achievements in one short paragraph. He is an undergraduate of Yale University, earned his MD from Western Reserve University, and earned gold medal in 1956 Olympic Games. This is just the beginning. Dr. Esselstyn has been associated with Cleveland Clinic since 1968. He is the recipient of many prestigious awards. The list is too long. He has published many articles in medical journals and is also an author of the book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. Today we are going to meet the speaker who is not only knowledgeable but also has passion and grit to follow his mission. Dr. Esselstyn has conducted thorough researches and implemented them in practical lifestyle. At present, he is serving as Director of Cardiovascular Disease Prevention and Reversal Program. I request Dr. Esselstyn to honor us by taking this speech. Dr. Esselstyn.
Marks. I can't tell you how honored I feel to be a speaker at this inaugural chapter of your organization. A particular thanks to Vinod Shah for his patience and persistence. The only thing that I would change next time would be I need a map of the old post road. The post road has a lot of ins and outs that a stranger from Cleveland was not familiar with. So it was a kind of an adventure. I don't think there's been a time that I've ever had as an intro to my presentation such a beautiful dancer. Thank you. All right. Now, a couple of things I want to correct. And that is, I am not a cardiologist. I had a career as a general surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic, but halfway through my career, I got intrigued by nutrition and the health benefits that could come from that. So although I'm not a cardiologist, I do not direct the cardiovascular program at the Cleveland Clinic. That's an entirely different division. I work at the Cleveland Clinic Wellness Institute, where I do direct the cardiovascular disease prevention and reversal program. So, with that understood, let's dive in to see if we can't share with you some of my research and clinical strategies for eliminating cardiovascular disease, a leading killer of women and men in Western civilization. Now, it's really almost a bit of an embarrassment to think that in this country we have built $1 billion health industry around an illness that does not even exist in half the planet. So we could probably do a lot better. It's really fascinating to think that even today, the amount of nutrition that is taught to physicians in medical school is very, very meager, very modest. And the amount that physicians get in education and nutrition in their postgraduate training is almost shameful. Now, the thing that's really quite striking, suppose that I was to take my credentials in, let's say, cardiovascular surgery. Suppose a cardiovascular surgeon were to hang out their shingle, either in Okinawa, rural China, the Papua Highlands, Central Africa, or the Tarahumara Indians in northern Mexico. Forget it. You better plan on selling pencils. You're not going to have any business there. They don't have cardiovascular disease. Why? Because they all thrive on whole food, plant-based nutrition, without oil. Okay. Now this is the oldest slide in my presentation, and this takes me back to 1968. And that was when I was leaving Vietnam. I had spent a year there as a combat surgeon. And this slide reminds me to share with the audience the fact that if we were to look at the autopsy of our young GIs who died in combat in Korea, at average age 20, roughly 80% of those young GIs already have the foundation for cardiovascular disease. And yet, when that study was repeated 45 years later, in 1999, this time looking at young women and men who have died of accidents, homicides, and suicides between the ages of 17 and 34. Now, the disease is ubiquitous. Everybody. In this country, you graduate from high school. You graduate from high school and you get a diploma, but you also get the foundation for heart disease. Now, is there anybody in this room who's over 17 years of age? Well, I'm always more engaged when I'm speaking to patients. All right. Now, we had a chance to get it right. We had a chance to get it absolutely right in World War II. In World War II, the Axis powers of Germany overran the Low Countries of Holland and Belgium. At the same time, they occupied Denmark and Norway. Characteristically, the Germans took away their livestock for their troops. Their cattle, their sheep, their goats, their pigs, their chickens, their turkeys. Gone. Suddenly. Suddenly, these Western European nations were now plant-based. And it was interesting that Doctors Strom and Janssen, in 1951, looking at the results in Norway during this period of deaths from heart attack and stroke. And this is where I wish I had a pointer but let's be creative here. If I can get you to look at the left, you'll notice in 1927, the deaths in Norway from heart attack and stroke in 1927 were going up. 1930, they were going up. 1935, they were going up. 1939, 40, in come the Germans. Whoop! 1941, whoop! 42. Suddenly these deaths were decreasing. Who knew these Germans were these great public health educators? But look what happened in 1945 with the death of Adolf Hitler, the cessation of hostilities in the European theater. Immediately back comes the dairy, back comes the meat, back come the heart attacks, back come the strokes. Look how profound, powerful, and prompt that was. Pretty impressive. Now, you've gone through the easy part. Now we got some new vocabulary. There will be two pieces of scientific vocabulary that I want you to carry away from this presentation. Now, obviously on the right, you're looking at, I can almost be, let's see, no, not quite. On the right, you're looking at an artery that is very diseased. And you're probably saying, when that finally closes off, there'll be a heart attack. Well, actually, probably not. Yes, something that is this diseased and severe will give you chest pain, angina, shortness of breath. But a heart attack may be 10%, because this happens over such a long period of time that the body will build its own little tiny collaterals, these little threads going around that blockage that would sustain the downstream viability of the heart muscle, even though that may shut off. But what I really want you to understand is, on the left, even those of you in the back, if you look carefully, at the innermost lining of that normal artery, there's a thin little dark layer that you can see. Now here's the first piece of scientific information. I want you never to forget. Hold on to it. That layer, that tiny, delicate, innermost layer, is the endothelium. E-N-D-O-T-H-E-L-I-U-M. The endothelium is truly remarkable because it makes a magic molecule that is responsible for the salvation and the protection of all of our vasculature. Now, the first thing that happens when you're eating your milkshake, your pizza, your cheeseburger, things get sticky. All these cellular elements get sticky. Your endothelium gets sticky. Your white cells get sticky. Your cholesterol, LDL, gets sticky. Platelets get sticky. All right? Now, this is the one you've all been waiting for. But let's get make sense. I wish I had the pointer, but let's do this. The blue is where the blood is flowing. Just below the blue, you'll see that line of purple cells, the endothelium. They are the ones that separate the wall of the artery from the flowing blood. So let's go way over to the left, up high in the blue. Those little orange molecules are your bad LDL cholesterol, but they are now sticky. They bump up against the sticky endothelium. And because of what you've been eating, there may be a crack, a fissure, an opening in the endothelium. So now your LDL cholesterol migrates from the intravascular position to the subendothelial position. It's now in the wall of your artery. And that now suddenly gets oxidized by the free radicals from the food you've been eating. That is why Peter Libby from Harvard, whose slide this is, has made the LDL cholesterol no longer orange. It now becomes yellow because it's a small, hard, dense, oxidized cholesterol particle. The subendothelial space does not like this and calls upon our SWAT team, our white blood cells, to come across into the subendothelial space. And notice here that Peter Libby from Harvard has painted the white blood cells blue in honor of Yale, and I like that. Now, what these SWAT team does, it gobbles up as it goes across, follow the arrows, it goes across, gobbling up, gobbling up, gobbling up like Pac-Man, all those small, hard, dense LDL particles until we get all the way over to the right here where we in medicine do what we do so often, we change the name. It now is the foam cell. The foam cell is absolutely chock full of these small, hard, dense LDL particles. And the small cell and the foam cell is truly the Darth Vader of this sequence of events. Because the foam cell manufactures these nasty, nasty enzymes that we call metalloproteinases. Stromelicin, elastase, collagenase, myeloperoxidase, they kind of roll right off your tongue. What do they do that's so bad? What those metalloproteinases do, they gradually and progressively, starting over here on the left under A, notice the cap, CAP, the cap over the plaque is getting thinner and thinner and thinner from those metalloproteinases until it gets so thin that the sheer force of blood racing over those caps thins them to the point where they rupture. Now that is absolutely the most seminal moment right there. Once you have ruptured your plaque, the cap over the plaque is ruptured. Now that means that you have the oozing out of, the extravasation, if you will, of plaque content oozing out into the flowing blood. It activates our clotting factors, platelets. And now we go to B, and look what you see where the rupture has occurred. There's a clot. And the clot is in and of itself self-propagating. So that means that in a matter of minutes, a plaque that was blocking the artery by no more than 30%, probably 80% of the people in this room have something like that. Suddenly, which was blocked 35%, now the clot is forming, and over here to all of, and now the clot is in and of itself self-propagating. So in a matter of further minutes, now we're all the way over to C, and the entire artery is suddenly blocked. All the downstream heart muscle is deprived of oxygen and nutrients. It starts to die. That's 90% of your heart attacks. Now, if I do my job correctly today with you, every one of you and your friends, and maybe some people who aren't your friends, can make themselves heart attack proof. How are you going to do that? We're not going to do it with another pill. We're not going to do it with a drug. We're not going to do it with another procedure or a stent or a bypass operation. How are we going to do that? We're going to do it by changing your biochemistry. How are we going to change your biochemistry? By having you eat whole food, plant-based nutrition. Now forget the x-ray in this one, but you can see the artist here has shown us an artery that is half blocked with plaque, and the other half is still open. Now you can see the endothelial cells lining the inside of the open part of the artery. Now, we used to think of the endothelial cell up until 1980 as nothing more than a cute little red brick that was lining these wonderful pipes of ours, these blood vessels. But that all stopped in 1980. Why? Because in 1980, Dr. Furchtgott, working in Brooklyn, was doing an experiment where he would take the largest blood vessel and wrote an aorta. And he would make this sort of elliptical spiral staircase cut on this aorta, right through the endothelium. And then he would immerse it in a bath of saline, and it would constrict. But one day, he took the aorta, no cut, no injury to the endothelium, and he immersed it in the saline, and it dilated. Now suddenly, the race was on globally. What was the EDRF that Dr. Furchtgott had discovered? Endothelial derived, thank you, relaxation factor. Now, for that discovery, Dr. Murad, Dr. Inauguraion, and Dr. Furchtgott received in 1998 the Nobel Prize. What was the Nobel Prize for? Because what was so remarkable? What was remarkable about that discovery? Because there are some absolutely amazing functions that nitric oxide has. One, nitric oxide will keep all the cellular elements in our bloodstream flowing smoothly like Teflon rather than Velcro. Number two, nitric oxide is the strongest blood vessel dilator in the body. When you climb stairs, the arteries to your heart, the arteries to your legs, they widen, they dilate, that's nitric oxide. Number three, nitric oxide will protect the wall of your artery from ever becoming thickened, stiff, or inflamed. Therefore, it is protecting you from high blood pressure, hypertension. Number four, now here is the absolute key. Number four, an adequate and safe amount of nitric oxide will protect you from ever developing blockages or plaque. So literally everybody on the planet, whether they're from London, Berlin, Chicago, New York, or Columbus, Ohio, if they have cardiovascular disease, it is because by now, in the preceding decades, they have so sufficiently trashed, injured, and compromised the capacity of their endothelial cells to make nitric oxide. They simply don't have enough to protect themselves from making blockages and plaque. But the good news here is this. This is not a malignancy. This is a completely benign foodborne illness. And once you can take a patient who has cardiovascular disease and get them to understand that the reason they have this is because they have destroyed the capacity of their endothelial cell to make nitric oxide, and they never again have anything pass through their lips that is going to further injure an already train-wrecked endothelial system, then the endothelial system recovers. It'll make enough nitric oxide so the disease cannot progress. And we often see significant elements of disease reversal. Now, how are you going to measure? Because I can see looking out at this audience, any number of you are looking at me saying to yourselves, gosh, I wonder what my endothelial production of nitric oxide is. We don't really measure that in the office regularly. But from a research basis, what is done is, if you will take an ultrasound probe, place it over the brachial artery at the elbow, and then there on the screen is the diameter of the artery. Then, for 5 minutes, you then encircle your upper arm with a blood pressure cuff that you inflate above systolic blood pressure, so that for 5 minutes you have absolutely zero blood flow to your forearm and hand. Now, I've had that done. It's not exactly habit forming. Then you release the cuff and immediately remeasure the new diameter of the brachial artery, since once the tourniquet is off. And in the normal individual, it'll be 30% greater because of all the outpouring of nitric oxide while that blood pressure cuff was inflated above systolic. Now, the next thing that happened that was interesting was Dr. Robert Vogel. Robert Vogel was the chairman of cardiology at Maryland University, and he took a group of healthy young subjects to a certain fast food restaurant, which is characterized by arches which are golden. Half of them had the cornflakes, and then they measured the brachial artery tourniquet test. Normal. The other half had the hash browns and sausage. Within 120 minutes after eating that meal, they couldn't dilate the artery. That single meal of hash browns and sausage had so injured, so compromised the capacity of their endothelial cells to make nitric oxide, they didn't have enough to protect themselves. So, you and I know that the next morning, even though by the late afternoon and early evening, even they had begun to recover. But you and I know that the next morning for breakfast is going to be scrambled eggs and bacon. At lunchtime, maybe we'll have white bread with mayonnaise and cold cuts. And at supper time, we'll have a baked potato with sour cream, lamb chops, vegetables soaked in butter, ranch dressing on a salad, and ice cream for dessert. Here in the USA, we start, as children, absolutely destroying the capacity of our endothelial cells to make nitric oxide. So that by the time this disease has progressed and we were in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, now we started having these clinical cardiac events, heart attack and stroke. This is just a summary of what I have shared with you. And these are the functions of nitric oxide. Good. Now, if I were, what we've been focusing on today is the endothelial cell. But there are three other absolutely vital defense mechanisms that our body has. And if I was to get into these, we would be here till midnight. Let me just say to you that while we're talking about the endothelial cell, when you protect the endothelial cell with whole food plant-based nutrition, you absolutely optimize all of the other three as well. So that doesn't have to be a concern. Now, enough talk about background. How do you know this works? I want to take you back to the first study that I did with this. This is back in the 1985. And it was a small study because I still had all my surgical obligations. So the study was small, but the patients were sick. Cardiology sent me a group of patients who were like my late brother-in-law used to call them Dr. Esselstyn's walking dead. They had failed their first or second bypass, they had failed their first or second angioplasty, they were too sick for these procedures or they had refused. There were 5 who were told by their expert cardiologist they wouldn't live out the year. Those 5 made it beyond 20 years. So, now the key here is this. This is so important. What are the foods that every time they pass your lips, what are the foods that injure your artery? They are any drop of oil, olive oil, corn oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, coconut oil, palm oil in a cracker, oil in a piece of bread, oil in a salad dressing. Oil injures endothelial cells, as does anything with a mother or a face, meat, fish, chicken, fowl, turkey, and eggs, or dairy, milk, cream, butter, cheese, ice cream, and yogurt. I don't like sugar, I don't like nuts when patients who have heart disease, or avocado. and I don't like coffee with caffeine. Aha, what's left? Well, I'll show you in a minute. Now, for those of you who are nervous what I said about oil, there are multiple peer-reviewed scientific articles that show exactly what this one does. Olive, soybean, and palm oil intake have a similar acute detrimental effect over the endothelial function in healthy young subjects. This is the work of Stanley Hazen from the Cleveland Clinic, looking at the molecules of lecithin and carnitine, which are found in these omnivore eating products. Eggs, milk, cream, dairy, liver, red meat, poultry, pork, lamb, duck, lamb, venison, and shellfish and fish all contain lecithin and carnitine. If you are an omnivore eating these foods, you possess in your gut a microbiome of bacteria that when they metabolize lecithin and carnitine, they produce TMA, trimethylamine, which is rapidly oxidized by your liver to trimethylamine oxide. And what does that mean? Well, trimethylamine oxide injures your blood vessel. Here's the schematic. Lecithin and carnitine in the omnivore foods. The gut bacteria metabolize it to trimethylamine oxide, which injures blood vessels. Okay. I'm going to take one 15-second moment away from cardiovascular disease just to point out that in October of 2015, of all things, the World Health Organization, countries all over the world, agreed that red meat would now have the same level of carcinogenicity as smoking cigarettes. Pretty powerful statement. Now, you're going to eat, therefore, you're going to eat all these marvelous whole grains. Whole grains for your cereal, bread, pasta, and rolls. 101 different types of legumes, lentils, vegetables, and fruit. All these marvelous sweet potatoes and white potatoes and some fruit. And those are absolutely delicious recipes that are found now in any number of authors who have wonderful books with hundreds of wonderful menus of plant-based foods from the foods I've indicated here. Now there's one thing that's not in my book that I want to share with you that we've added just in the last 6.5, 7 years. And that is that if I have somebody who comes to me with a newly diagnosed cardiovascular disease, I need them to imagine they could shrink their head to a size that could crawl inside the artery that's blocked. And they would see that that blockage is due to a cauldron of oxidative inflammation. So we need antioxidants, but no, don't go down to the health food store and buy a jug of pills that says antioxidant because it doesn't work and it's going to be harmful. You're going to get your antioxidants from food. Fair enough. What food? Food that is high in what we call ORAC value. O-R-A-C, oxygen radical absorptive capacity. So if you're having raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, and blackberries on your morning oat cereal, that's a terrific start. But nothing can trump the antioxidant value of green leafy vegetables. Therefore, I need you to chew 6 times a day a green leafy vegetable, roughly the size of your fist, after it has first been boiled in water 5.5 to 6 minutes so it's nice and tender. And then you must anoint it with several drops of the delightful balsamic vinegar. Why? Because the acetic acid in the balsamic vinegar has been shown to restore the nitric oxide synthase enzyme contained within the endothelial cell that is responsible for making nitric oxide. And the other benefit from that is, remember, we're trying to restore nitric oxide. The other way that the green does this, not smoothies, not juicing, but when you chew this green, you are chewing a nitrate. As you chew this nitrate in your mouth, it is mixing with the facultative anaerobic bacteria that reside in the crypts and grooves of your tongue. Those bacteria are going to reduce that nitrate in your mouth to a nitrite. When you swallow the nitrite, it is going to be further reduced by gastric acid to nitric oxide. So here you have this beautiful instrument, reading a green, 2 additional ways of making up nitric oxide. Very important and very exciting. But remember, no oil! I want to share with you several angiograms of disease reversal. These were all reviewed in the Cleveland Clinic Angiography Core Laboratory by senior technicians that do this all day long for national medical trials. So when I give you a percent of reversal, I know it's accurate. What you're looking at here right now is the left anterior descending coronary artery. And where the arrow is on the left, going over to the right, that is a 10% improvement. That is about as small as the naked eye can see. However, a little easier on this next one, which is the circumflex artery, going from the left, again, to the arrow on the right. This was described as a 20% improvement in this 58-year-old factory worker. And in this 54-year-old security guard, looking at the right coronary artery, this was described as a 30% improvement. Now, this is Joe Crow, a surgical colleague, and he is in the first chapter in my book. In 1996, at age 44, Joe began to get chest pain. Cholesterol was 156. He was not overweight, he was not diabetic, he was not hypertensive, and he regularly exercised. Cardiology worked him up in October, 96, nothing. A month later, he finished his surgical schedule, sat down to write postoperative orders, when suddenly the elephant was on his chest. Severe pain in his left jaw, shoulder, arm. He was having a heart attack. He was whipped down to the cath lab. They start the catheterization. Cardiac arrest, resuscitate. Finish the catheterization. 1 more cardiac arrest, resuscitate. 3 days later, he's stable. And they discharge him. But he's very depressed. Why is he so depressed? Because at the time of his angiogram, the entire lower 1/3 of his left anterior descending was all moth-eaten and diseased over too long a segment. You just can't ram in stent after stent. And it was too far down the artery for a bypass. So he was very depressed. And 2 weeks after his heart attack, my wife, Ann, and I had Joe and his wife out for supper. Joe, you've been eating this absolutely horrible Western diet. You've got the typical Western disease. Why don't you think about going plant-based? We've got 10 years of data. And he said, well, they could not offer me anything else, so I think I'll give it a shot. But I'm not going to take any of those statin drugs. I don't trust them. There are too many side effects. Fine. That's your call, not a problem. He became the absolute personification of commitment to whole food plant-based nutrition over the next 30 months, and then cardiology decided he should have another angiogram. And on the day that, on noontime, on the day that he had his follow-up angiogram, since our offices are only 3 doors apart, I found myself walking over, opening the door to his office. There he was, sitting behind the desk. Joe, I understand you had the follow-up angiogram earlier this morning. Could you mind sharing with me how things go? He got up from his desk, walked around, put his arms around me, and there were a couple of these. And he said, I think we're doing okay. I said, well, that's nice. Would there be any chance that I could see the angiogram? And he said, yeah. Now, This is not going to happen to everybody. Maybe a fourth, maybe 25, 30% of people who have a plaque that is young, a plaque that is made up of inflammation, fat, and cholesterol. There's an enormous capacity that the body has to reverse. But it's going to be my responsibility today to show you how even those persons who have an old plaque that's been there for decades, that's made up of scar, fibrosis, calcification, even those patients, when they go whole food plant-based nutrition, are able to return to full activity of daily living without restriction. I'm going to have to show you that before we finish. Okay? Now, this is interesting. Despite my sparkling personality, there were 6 of the original 24 who I knew within the first 8 or 12 weeks, they just didn't get it. Nice guys, but I had no money for this study, so I returned them full-time to their expert cardiologists with the understanding that they were kind of my quasi-control group, as you were. And over the next 12 years, those who dropped out, 2 died, and the other 4 had to have another bypass while they were under the care of expert cardiologists. However, now what about the 18 who stayed with us? I wanted to know how many cardiac events of progressive disease they had sustained under the care of expert cardiologists in the 8 years prior to coming into our study. And they had these 49 events of worsening disease during that 8-year period in the hands of expert cardiologists. However, once they came into our study, over the next 12 years, 17 of those 18 had no further events. We did have one little sheep who, after 6 years, wandered from the flock. Got into the glazed donuts, French fries, lamb chops, and had to have a bypass, but proves the point that I'm trying to share with you today. Now, we took a pretty good hit on that. A lot of cardiologists and others said, wait a minute, Dr. Esselstyn, that's a small study, it's not randomized, and your diet is pretty harsh, extreme, and severe, and I will challenge anybody who says that, because our diet, which is harsh, severe, is just like half of the planet Earth that doesn't have this, and it's actually more creative because the only foods that we eliminate are those that we destroy. And you can get all the nutrients you want and enjoyment that you want when you start eating whole food plant-based nutrition. And they said, well, how do you know you could ever repeat this study and get similar results? So we did. In 2014, in July, we reported at this time 200 patients. 2 were lost to follow-up. Now, what makes you think you're going to get them to adhere? Well, we had an adherence rate of almost 90%, 89.3%. Now, many other physicians, because once a month at the Cleveland Clinic Wellness Institute, I do conduct an intensive counseling seminar for patients who do have cardiovascular disease. Now, how do we get this close to 90% adherence? The only way you're going to get that is with showing the patient respect. The only way that I know to show a patient respect is to give them our time. So when my secretary, this is how we start out, when I get the list of these 12 to 14 patients, always with their spouse or a significant other who comes for free. You've got to have both parties there. When I get this list, who's coming, I will call. And it may take me 30 minutes or 40 minutes. For me, I want the patient to know I want to get my arms around their story, at the same time provide them an opportunity to ask questions of me so that by the time they come to our 6-hour seminar, we have a strong platform from which we can all move forward. And why this 6 hours? Because they have got to understand, what I've given you in shorthand today, they have got to understand this, that the only reason they have their heart disease is because they have so sufficiently trashed, injured, and compromised the capacity of their endothelial cell to make nitric oxide. They didn't have enough. So now they understand that our focus is on getting them, not some drug, not some procedure, not an operation, getting them to understand that they are the locus of control, that we are empowering to be able to absolutely restore enough nitric oxide so that disease progression is vanquished. And maybe we could do it less than 6 hours, but I think that sends such a powerful message to the patient. We talk to them twice before they ever come. We talk to them again while they're there. And then they really have it solidly fixed in their mind how important it is for them to do this and do it right, and it's not that complicated. And you can see here on the that they were sick. 119 of the 177 who were compliant had already had a bypass, or they'd already had stents. And the category that now is becoming so exciting for me are the patients who are having elective stent or elective bypass. That is, they're not an emergency. And those patients, interestingly enough, let me just correct one thing. There's no question that if somebody is in the middle of having a heart attack or acute coronary syndrome, the standard bypass can be absolutely life-saving. But when these procedures are offered electively, the data show that there is no prolongation of life and there is no protection from a future heart attack. But we have found that when we have these patients fully compliant, they absolutely do not have to have the intervention, and that not only we save the nation a lot of money, but we also save a lot of morbidity and mortality. Now, as mentioned, we had one patient of the 177 who was non-compliant. He ate off the economy when he was in China, had a small stroke, but he's improved. The other 21 who were non-adherent, 62%, had disease progression. Now, I wanted to therefore compare our results with some of the better known cardiovascular studies that are out there. Let's start here in the lower left. By the way, the line on the left is major cardiac event, heart attack, stroke, and death. So here we are first, lower right, the Lyon diet Mediterranean study out of France. At the end of 4 years, 25% had either had heart attack, stroke, or death. Next one next to it, natural history of coronary artery disease, Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, New York City, 20% at 4 years. And the next one is Bill Bowden's Courage study, 19%. So there you are, somewhere around 21, 22% failure rate at 4 years. Then you go over to TTC, treating the cause. That's our result, 0.6%. That's over 30-fold difference. Why is there such a difference? Why are our patients thriving? Because we are treating the causation of the illness. Presently, with all due respect to my cardiovascular colleagues, none of the drugs, none of the stents, none of the bypasses have one single solitary thing to do with the causation of the illness. And there's been a basic covenant of trust since the days of Hippocrates that whenever possible, the caregiver will share with the patient what is the causation of the illness. And sadly today, in cardiovascular medicine, that's not being done. But I'm happy to say that 3 years ago, I was invited by the American College of Cardiology to become a member. They asked me to join their nutrition committee, which I've done. And we're trying to do what we can to educate cardiologists about the causation of this illness. so they can have much better results. Now, I know it sounds kind of crazy, having talked to you just about a study of 200 patients. Here's another one, same month, 3 patients. What in the world was I doing, writing about 3 patients? Well, it was because I was trying to send a message. These 3 patients were all representative of the absolute catastrophe of present-day cardiovascular medicine. Now, the first is a fellow I have yet to meet face-to-face, but he is from Newfoundland, Canada. Name is Bob Mercer. At age 44, he had a blockage of his right carotid artery and a stroke. Got over it pretty well, but at the same time, he had horrible, severe angina. They found a courageous surgeon in Toronto who would operate on him, even though he had a totally blocked right carotid. He had an excellent result. Now he was 69, 70 years of age, and he was again horrible angina, diabetic, overweight, erectile dysfunction, and his one remaining carotid artery was now 90% blocked. Of all things that have happened at this point, his 37-year-old daughter had a heart attack. During her convalescence, she ran into a book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. She said, "Pop, we got to do this together." They did. A year later, I got a letter from Bob Mercer. "Dr. Esselstyn, thank you. My diabetes is gone. I've lost 40 pounds. My erectile dysfunction is gone. My one remaining carotid artery is no longer 90% blocked. It's 67% blocked." Pretty exciting. This is a picture of Bob Mercer before and after. This next is a local boy outside the suburb of Cleveland, Art Soteros. Age 32, overweight, he becomes diabetic. Age 42, he has his first angina attack. Goes to the Cleveland Clinic, and over the next 6 years has 14 stents. Then he's told, "Listen, you got this aggressive disease, you better get a bypass." 14 stents and a bypass. That was good for a year and a half. Then he had all the angina back again. And somehow he had a fellow parishioner who told him about our program. He came, he lost 40 pounds. Within 3 weeks, all of his angina is gone. All of his diabetes is gone. And Art appears regularly at our monthly seminar and shares his story with those in attendance. Here is Art before and after. A third one is Jim McNamara. Jim McNamara, at age 55, small stroke. They tried to operate to correct this carotid artery. It totally failed, and the operation resulted in a total blockage of his right carotid artery. Then he began getting pain in his calf, which over a 2-year period got so severe, whenever he would pick his leg up to put it in the bed, he'd get this horrible tingling and numbness that would drive him nuts. Well, they decided they'd operate on the leg. The first operation failed, second operation failed, third operation failed. Told, "Listen, you got this aggressive disease, you're gonna have to take these drugs." His wife found us over the internet. Jim came, he had lost 35 pounds, no longer pre-diabetic. All of his leg pain disappeared. He walks now nonstop. And here he is, before on the left, and then dancing with his daughter at her wedding 8 months later, without any pain. Now, let's look at this. When you compare the dietary approach with the drug and the mechanical intervention approach, there is no mortality in the diet, no morbidity, there's no extra expense you gotta eat, and the benefits improve with time. And most importantly, anybody who's had a previous heart attack is walking around with the sword of Damocles, hanging over their head, wondering, when do I get my next heart attack? When's the other shoe going to fall? Nonsense. You learn to live in a way that you make yourself heart attack proof. Now, what in the world is the good of having a great heart if your brain isn't there? Huh? We know that by the age 85 in Sweden and this country, 50% of people will have dementia. Now, we really got some insight into this in 2001 when Megan Leary and her team from the West Coast came to the stroke meetings in Miami, and they reported their findings looking at 5,500 MRIs of the brains of Americans. What did they begin to see at age 50? These tiny little white spots. What are these tiny little white spots? Little strokes. Not a good plan, but you know, age 50, tiny stroke, big brain, not a problem. But suddenly, you blink your eye, you're no longer 50, you're 65. More often than before, you now say, sweetheart, where did I leave the car keys? Well, you get through that. Bingo, before you know it, you're 75. You look at her and you say, sweetheart, where did I leave the car? That's not working out too well. Bingo, now you're 85. You look at her and you say, are you my sweetheart? I can't reverse that. You don't suddenly wake up on your 85th birthday with dementia. You work hard in all those preceding decades to lay the foundation for that which doesn't have to occur. Here is a normal MRI, and here I counted once, 90. Can you imagine a message trying to go through that scar tissue? Now here, on the left you will see that the brain is all the way out to the skull. On the right, look, the brain is about an inch, 2.5 centimeters of space. That is what we call brain atrophy, cerebral atrophy. You don't want cerebral atrophy as you grow old. How do you prevent yourself from getting cerebral atrophy? You exercise. If you're going to walk 4 or 5 times a week, almost fast enough to break a sweat, or you bike or swim or some other form regularly. So exciting to think what exercise can do. What does it enlarge? The hippocampus for memory, frontal lobe for executive thinking. Now, here you are. In the upper left, you're looking at a 40-year-old triathlete. That's the thigh muscle. Upper right, 74-year-old couch potato. Lower right, 70-year-old triathlete. The message is pretty clear. Now here, what you're seeing on the left is the pulse volume at the right ankle of this, one of my patients when we first started the study. And it was low because he had to stop 5 times crossing the skyway to my office because of severe claudication and pain in his right calf because of the partially blocked artery in his thigh. But I was so focused on his heart, I totally forgot about his leg. 11 months later, he said, Dr. Esselstyn, do you recall when I first started seeing you, I had to stop 5 times crossing the skyway to your office? Yeah. He said, you know, the last month it got to be 4 times, 3 times, 2 times. I said, then he said, I don't stop anymore. The pain is gone. I said, well, let's do this. Back to the vascular lab. Let's repeat the pulse volume. Bingo! It's now double what it was. We now suddenly had absolutely irrefutable scientific data that food and food alone could reverse cardiovascular disease. And you're going to say, well, wait a minute, what about the statin drug? Well, wait a minute. This is 1986. We never had any statin drug then. So I've given you 2 examples today. Dr. Crow, who refused statins, Don, they weren't even around. Pretty powerful stuff. How many statin drugs do you suppose the Okinawans take? Or Central Africa? None. Yeah, none. is a 78-year-old retired high school science teacher. And in his retirement, he and his wife loved to enter square dance contests. But during the fast square dance, he was getting bilateral calf pain because of the disease in his arteries, which was discovered when he saw these aggressive vascular surgeons. But he didn't like the idea of the operation that they were suggesting. Found us over the internet, came for counseling, and he said, Dr. Esselstyn, if I choose your method, how long will it take me to get rid of this calf pain? So I looked at him with great wisdom in my face. And I said, probably about 10 or 11 months. 3 months later, I get a phone call. Dr. Esselstyn, you do not speak the truth. The pain is gone. Now, I don't know what it's like here in Columbus or where you're from, but in Cleveland, if you're watching a mystery or a sporting event, just before the advertisement comes on, you will hear the mellifluous tones of the announcer say something like, when the moment is right, will you be ready? Now, we all know that the penile artery is really quite tiny compared to the coronary artery. So not infrequently, before somebody ever comes down with heart disease, they may find they're no longer able to raise the flag. But really all is not lost, because not infrequently, 10 or 11 months after I've counseled somebody, I get a phone call. Dr. Esselstyn, this is Mr. So-and-so. Yes, good to hear your voice. Yeah, he said, I really thought I ought to give you a call because recently something has come up. And I'm wondering if I don't owe you another check. All right, I promise you that you would learn what happens when there is a blockage that is made up of scar, fibrosis, and calcification, and that plaque in the epicardial artery is not going to go away, or will go away a small amount. What you're looking at here is a PET rubidium dipyridamole scan. If you look at on the left, you will see the parts that are orange or yellow, that's good blood flow. But see on the left, there's a green patch. And the green is what we call ischemia. That's poor blood flow. At the time that we first saw him, that's when I counseled him, because his cholesterol was 248. 10 days later, it was 137. And then 3 weeks later, we repeated the PET scan. And now, it's all back. Nobody washes out a plaque or blockage of any kind in 3 weeks. It doesn't happen. What's going on here? Here's what's going on. This is the heart without any muscle. This is the heart made up of all these blood vessels. Look, you can see the 3 main blood vessels that get all the publicity, all the reports, the left anterior descending, the right coronary artery, and the circumflex. Okay? Where do they go? They all go to deliver oxygen and nutrients of blood to the heart muscle. And look at that. The way they all interdigitate, there are thousands and thousands of vessels there. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I called Dr. Rodriguez, who was head of the Cleveland Clinic cardiovascular pathology section. He dissects 200 hearts a year from the deceased. And I asked him, how often do you ever see good old garden variety coronary artery disease, plaque, and blockages once the artery has entered the muscle? Never. Once in a very great while, maybe a severe diabetic. Other than that, never. So here's what's going on. When we first see these patients, and they've had this lifetime of eating so terribly, they have so beaten down their endothelial system into a train wreck, they don't have enough nitric oxide. So, Your endothelium now has become your enemy. Your endothelium is making two molecules. Endothelium molecules are thromboxane and endothelin. What do? They are vasoconstrictive. So, when you see these patients, that entire intramuscular cascade of coronary arteries are now pinched, squeezed, constricted. And they're wired for once you get them to never have another morsel pass their lips that is going to further injure the endothelial cell. They recover. You make enough nitric oxide so that the endothelial cells stop making the vasoconstrictor, thromboxane and endothelin, and they start making nitric oxide. So you open up this enormous, enormous interdigitating cascade of vessels. And if you recall in physics, Clausius's law of flow through the hollow viscous is related to the fourth power of the radius. Translation, tiny increase in diameter, huge increase in flow, which explains why these patients with chest pain and angina often, within days, it is improved and sometimes disappears. These are the 8 ways that you can see a disease reversing. I've showed you the angiograms, the stress test can reverse. I've showed you the PET scan. We've talked about the carotid ultrasound. We've shown you the pulse volume, and we've talked about the 3 symptom changes of angina, provocation, and erectile dysfunction. Now, this is a building where on the 8th floor of this building, for many years, I was a surgeon. And I show it to you because I think you ought to know what the trees look like in Cleveland in February. All right. However, now that I'm no longer in surgery, and I've been hired by the Cleveland Clinic Wellness Institute, where the budget is really quite modest, but the morale is high. And one thing I've learned since 57 years, having left medical school, yeah, brains are important, but nothing seems to be as important as persistence, persistence, persistence. Best exemplified by this young damsel, Life magazine, 1939, trying to learn how to do the splits. It's tough. It's tough, but she stuck with it and stuck with it and stuck with it, and sure enough, the other day, I understand that in downtown Columbus, she was spotted and she had got it right. So in conclusion, let me say that I guess the reason I find myself today more passionate than ever about the field of medicine. Yes, my career in surgery was exciting, but nothing can match what we have today because this whole food, plant-based nutrition has the capacity to absolutely be a seismic revolution in health. And this seismic revolution in health will only come about when we in the profession and folks like yourself have the will and the grit and the determination to share with the public what is a lifestyle, and most specifically, what is the nutritional literacy that will empower them to absolutely annihilate chronic illness. Because it's not only cardiovascular disease that is taken over. You can destroy diabetes. You can get rid of hypertension. You can get rid of strokes. You can get rid of vascular dementia, or ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, allergies, asthma, the list goes on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wish levels by sound by wishing with the
just taking that.
If you have any question for Dr. Esselstyn, we will take a couple of questions. If you have any.
How exciting for me to know that the Ohio chapter is apparently now officially open. Congratulations.
Hello, I have one question. Sometimes we go to our regular doctor and they are asking for the fish oil. Take the fish oil or all of the stuff. So it's a benefit to take a fish oil. When I look at the presentations and I was told, so doctor, can you please advise?
Yeah, I don't think people want you to really necessarily take the fish oil. What they're really after is omega-3, because when you get fish oil, you know, there's always the concern of getting PCBs, mercury, and dioxin, and these are certainly not the things we want. And I don't like the people to have the oil. So if I have patients, and I think it is perfectly legitimate to measure your omega-3, omega check. You'll either be optimal, borderline, or poor. And if you're borderline or poor, even though you're eating plenty of flaxseed meal and chia seeds and green leafy vegetables, if your omega-3 is still too low. I don't want you to push it up with omega-3 oil capsules, because you can now get the vegan capsule with algae, not with oil. And those are the ones that I would prefer.
Thank you. I have one more question. In all the clinical cases you described, if you put the person on vegan diet instead of plant-based, how would the recovery would be different?
The question is the vegan diet versus whole food plant-based diet. My trouble with I do treat vegans for heart disease. Vegans eat oil. That injures endothelial cells. Vegans eat French fries. Vegans eat glazed donuts. This is just a few examples. And once we can get the vegans to eat whole food plant-based nutrition, get rid of the oil and those things that are going to injure endothelial cells, that's where the difference is.
So the oil is the only major difference, kind of, right?
It's one, well, the sugar.
Just one last question from the audience that we received is soy and tofu. They are good alternatives in the vegan?
I think the more you can get unprocessed, edamame is unprocessed. That's just the way the soy comes. When you start processing it, it can be quite an adventure. And although I will confess that I have tofu at least 3 times a month, but my good friend Colin Campbell has raised some issues about an excess of soy protein, because he feels that soy protein in excess can increase your IGF-1. And insulin growth factor 1 is a tumor promoter in an adult. So we want to be a little bit careful about that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us. We have our one last speaker. Her name is Dr. Hanisha Patel. Dr. Hanisha Patel is a neuropathic medical doctor who works at an integrative medical clinic in Washington, D.C. and for a telepath company where she sees clients virtually and in person. She works with people dealing with chronic diseases like diabetes, hormonal imbalances, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and heart disease to help people achieve the health results they desire. Dr. Hanisha Patel.
Everyone, thank you so much for having me here today. Like she said, my name is Dr. Hanisha Patel, and I just want to clarify that I am a naturopathic medical doctor. And with my presentation today, I do want to clarify that the information on this presentation is meant for educational purposes only, and it's not meant to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. a little bit about myself. So, like I said, I'm a naturopathic medical doctor, and I have a bachelor's of science in pharmaceutical sciences from The Ohio State University. So I am a Buckeye, and I feel like a lot of you are wondering, what is naturopathic medicine? Naturopathic medicine is a distinct primary healthcare profession that combines the ancient wisdom of nature with the modern rigors of modern science. Naturopathic doctors treat on a whole person level. And so we look at the whole person, the individual, and treat the underlying cause of disease and promote health and wellness. A little bit more about myself. I myself have struggled with a lot of digestive issues, menstrual irregularities, joint pain, back pain, dry skin, fatigue, cold intolerance, things like that. And a naturopathic doctor actually found upon physical exam, my thyroid was slightly enlarged, and with thorough lab work, we found that I had Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. And after changing my diet and lifestyle, I rarely to never have this plethora of symptoms that you see up here. Okay, so getting right into it. What is a plant-based diet? Dr. Esselstyn did a really good job of kind of breaking down what a plant-based diet is and what kind of foods are encompassed in a whole foods plant-based diet. But I'd like to re-emphasize that. It's not just a diet, it's a lifestyle. It's how we are meant to be eating since the beginning of humankind. It's, again, re-emphasizing the fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, things like that, and minimizing the consumption of meat, dairy, and refined flours, and refined sugar, and refined oils. I think there was a question about being vegan versus eating plant-based, and the main difference is that as a vegan, we can still consume bleached flours, refined oils, refined sugars, and things like that that can still negatively impact our health. Into the, all of the benefits right now, because Dr. Esselstyn did a great job of doing that. As he already stated, that it significantly reduces your risk of heart disease. And I'm going to re-emphasize this. What he said was, heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States, and it is the most preventable and reversible. So it's crazy to think that something so preventable and reversible is the leading cause of death in the United States right now. And just going back to that, there is really no magic pill to reducing blood pressure, high cholesterol, fat loss, weight loss, things like that. This is the closest thing we have to a magic pill right now. Another thing that he talked about a little bit was the dementia, the Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and diabetes prevention in terms of plant-based diet. Some of the people that I work most with are patients with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, as well as diabetes. And a plant-based diet has been known to help reduce the risk of diabetes and even reverse some diabetes. And some of the major hallmarks going to Alzheimer's, some of the major hallmarks of Alzheimer's are what he talked about with brain cell atrophy, amyloid plaques, and neurofibrillary tangles. And all of these have been associated with insulin resistance. It's crazy because today about 80% of people who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's actually have some level of insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. And that's why Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are now being considered type 3 diabetes. With Parkinson's, there isn't as much research done. However, they have found that people with type 2 diabetes have a 38% increased risk of developing Parkinson's. So I think it's a pretty significant amount of people that are impacted by the lifestyle, the standard American diet. Okay, so going into this a little bit further, does it really matter if it's organic? I feel like this is a common question that I get, and I want to really emphasize that it really, really does. There have been over 300 research studies done that have found that organic foods increase the levels of polyphenols and antioxidants by 20 to 40%. They also lower the levels. They also have lower levels of cadmium, about 50% lower levels of cadmium, which is a heavy metal toxin that has been associated with cardiovascular disease, and actually what Dr. Esselstyn was talking about with that nitric oxide production, cadmium significantly lowers that nitric oxide production. So eating more organic, essentially, you're getting way more nutrients than you would than in foods that are not organic. And this, of course, has been known, the polyphenols and antioxidants have been known to decrease the risk of cardiovascular diseases, bone diseases, kidney diseases, liver diseases, and even certain cancers. So, I don't know if you all came in knowing this, but you're getting a whole science lesson today. So I wanted to go into what are polyphenols. I like to talk about why exactly something is healthy for us. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why is this better for us to do? So what are polyphenols? Polyphenols are secondary metabolites of plants that have micronutrients that are packed with antioxidants. So we hear a lot about macronutrients in our world today. Macronutrients include things like carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So we hear a low-carb diet, high-fat diet, high-protein diet, whatever it is. These are things that we talk about often. Things that we don't talk about are micronutrients. Micronutrients are vitamins and minerals that are necessary for our bodily processes, such as producing enzymes and hormones, and we can't live without them, right? And they have these antioxidants that are present in reducing the harm from certain stressors. So going into it a little bit further, then what are these antioxidants that we talk about, and how do they work? Antioxidants fight off something in our body called free radicals. Dr. Esselstyn also talked a little bit about free radicals and how they impact our blood vessels, but here I want to talk about how it's going down to the cellular level. So we have billions of cells in our body, and all of these cells are protected by something called cellular membrane. This cellular membrane can be damaged by something called free radicals. These free radicals are exactly what they sound like. They're radical. They are like robbers or burglars that come into your home and take all of the things that you need and destroy your home. They break that window down, they break it down, and now any invader can get in. They've taken what they need, and now you're struggling because your home is damaged. And so this, what you can see right here, is the things that damage our cellular membrane are what cause free radicals. It's things like UV rays, pollution, chronic stress, poor diet, of course, and this is what we're talking about a lot of, and lack of movement and exercise. All of these things will damage our cellular membrane and will lead to things will lead to disease. So what's protecting our cellular membrane are these antioxidants, and we're getting those from whole foods, fruits and vegetables that are significant for our health. So eating organic, we talked about, so from eating organic you're going to get a higher level of polyphenols and antioxidants. But eating organic can be a little costly, right? So what I like to do is go by the Environmental Working Group's list of Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. So the Dirty Dozen shows us the fruits and vegetables that have the most amount of pesticide residue on them, causing a decrease in levels of antioxidants. So things like strawberries and spinach, I will always, always, always get organic. But what we have on the other side are the Clean 15. These are the fruits and vegetables that have the least amount of pesticide residue. So if cost was an issue, then it's okay to skimp out a little bit on the organic when it comes to this. For example, avocados, they tend to be more expensive in general, and they have the least amount of pesticide residue, so I will get inorganic avocados at times. And then going back to, I think I talked about it a little bit earlier, and then Dr. Esselstyn talked about it as well. There's a way of eating vegan in a healthy way, and then also eating in an unhealthy way. So on the left, you'll see there's a lot of fried foods, a lot of oils, processed foods, processed flours, things like that. And then on the right, you'll see a lot of legumes like chickpeas and avocados and Brussels sprouts and what else? Sweet potatoes, all of the fruits and vegetables that are hearty and healthy for us. One of the things that I really like to use, one of my favorite resources is Whole30.com. So I wanted this to make this something where you can go home and start making changes today. And so the Whole30.com is this great website that gives you a lot of recipes and meals that you can use that include Whole foods and fruits and vegetables. And another great thing that they've recently added is a phone app called the Real Plans Meal Planner phone app. And you can actually start meal planning there. These foods consist of a lot of spices, and a lot of our Indian food, of course, we have so many spices and so many ways of making our foods healthy, but it's about how we're making them and reducing certain types of oils like canola oil and increasing more healthy oils and ghee into our diet. One of the things I also like to do that I challenge you all to try is the 30 days of only whole foods. It's a Whole30, and this website gives you all of the keys to success for making that happen. But 30 days of whole foods, I guarantee you'll feel significantly better. Whatever, some problems you may not even realize you had, you'll notice that they're gone. Okay, so if you have any more questions or information, this is how you can contact me. My name is Dr. Hanisha. Again, thank you so much for having me. I really like this quote. If you're still looking for that one person to change your life, take a look in the mirror. Thank you.
Now it is time to show our gratitude towards the people who made this event possible. We thank World Vegan Vision founder, Mr. H.K. Shah, and putting his trust on us. We thank the visiting team of World Vision Vegan and our renowned keynote speaker, Dr. Esselstyn. We thank Dr. Hanisha Patel for her presentation. Thank Mr. Ketan Patel, who secured this venue for us and took responsibilities for food management, which you are going to enjoy shortly. Shami Srivastava for the dance performance. B3 Event Management, our own Panna Ben, for providing us their art and decoration. We thank all the volunteers for food management, especially young enthusiastic like Parth Patel, Dharav Patel and Ritik Dhruv. We thank Mr. Mahesh Soni and Aditi Dhruv for capturing this event in camera, and we thank TV Asia, especially Sheetal Padik, who has been constant supporter of this mission and is publicity and media partner for World Vegan Vision. Above all, we would also like to thank all the guests who have come from Cincinnati or Columbus as well. And we would like to thank you all for your presence today. Now please enjoy this vegan lunch. There are 2 lines, so you can take the lunch from both the sides. Thank you.